So let us say the prayer for teacher and student. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahana Punaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahi Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us both. May we work together with great energy. May our study be illumined. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace beyond all. So, fire away if you have some questions. I hope I have some answers. I'll put the microphone on mute so that you can formulate some questions.
If from a scientific perspective, everything is sound, everything is vibration, then could we I would say not speculate, but could we think about like maybe other entities that could have basically overachieve this sort of capabilities to handle speed and sound and I would say the human characteristic, in fact. Let me explain to be more clear. For example, language is sounds, and every language has different sound, a different vibration. When I hear Portuguese, he has a different vocalization. And Italian has another one. So I would say that would it be possible to have like other entities that basically have overachieved what we humans have already done?
Yes. So you're asking, is it possible? Is that your question?
Well, yes. It's more. It's all related to sounds. I'm really concentrating on the thing that all to me sound. It's all vibration, and therefore, like I know that I have to think about like frequency and sound vibration and the way things are organized in the universe through sounds. So my question is more towards, yes, obviously, then language, because it's all communication as entities, as we all always do sound one way or another. So
yes. So this is so. How do we view things from the Vedanta point of view? From the Vedanta point of view, we do not view everything as sound. We view everything as spirit. So you see, as soon as we get involved in asking individual questions, maybe we have a toolbox with three possible broad categories of tools. One is a dualistic system that says, I'm here and everything is elsewhere. Another might be a connection, a connectivity, that I'm a spark of the divine. And another will be absolute non-dualism, to say there's only one existence, but the one existence will not be vibration at all. So how does the absolute, which is a non-dualistic aspect, non-dualistic reality, how does that become all the diversity that we see? Is it through vibration and sound? That's part of it, yes. And will it diversify itself in so many different ways? Yes, it will. But we know that it comes from essentially one primordial cosmic mind. And from that, everything else comes, different aspects. Will there be other entities in parallel universes? Entirely possible. We know that in terms of the Vedantic scriptures, that there will be other beings in other realms, so to speak. And it's entirely possible, having a different world with a different rate of vibration, and no doubt a different means of communication. But essentially, they all come under the realm of phenomena. Now, phenomena is not something that is worth investigating unless it leads to the noumenon, the unknown. And we are looking for the unknown. Now, ultimately, the pure spirit is unknown and unknowable by normal external means. It is known as our own pure entity. So there's a story I told the other day. There's a great spiritual teacher who dies and arrives at the gates of heaven. And he knocks, you can imagine. And the door opens. Yes, can I help you? Yes. Who is entering? Who is knocking? And the great teacher says, it is I. I'm sorry, you cannot enter. You can try again. And he goes back and he thinks and contemplates and meditates. And goes back, knocks, who is there? It is I. Again, it's all denied to him. 3, 4 times it happens. Then he really contemplates at a deep level and discovers spirit, discovers his own true nature. He knocks on the door again. Who is there? Oh, it is thee. Yes, now he gains entry. So it is all this one without a second. And whenever we ask a question in Vedanta, we should try to see it from various points of view, because we have what is called relative real perception. You can see how something looks different from different angles, and it need not be contradictory, but it can be supplementary. One position can supplement the next one. So the whole use of the science of what we call tanmatras, that is, different primordial, subtle undercurrents of waves. These are called tanmatras, subtle forces. And I mentioned before, according to the Ashtavakra Samhita, if you discover these primary forces that are behind and manifest as the gross world that we have, then you get immediately you get liberation, because you're able to contrast it with the unknown. That becomes realized by inference straight away, that these subtle forces are not just manifestations or not just waves within a certain space and time, even though it may be a different space and time known to us. But it leads us progressively to the understanding that it is all manifestations of divine grace flowing, and that there's no separation or difference. It simply comes out as in a manifested version. It goes from the absolute to the relative. Now the big question, of course, is how does that happen? How do we go from pure being to becoming? And so it's a different kind of causation we have to apply. This we technically call vivarta. That means apparitional causation. It looks like something when you apply certain conditions. Like if you look at something through glasses which are tinted green, everything will look green. You change it, you look through brown, it all becomes brown. You look through yellow, it all becomes yellow. So things become conditioned by virtue of how we see them and the instrumentation with which we see and how we relate to it. So if you're talking of science, well, science is investigating what we call Maya. And Maya is inscrutable. You'll never come to the end of it, because it is neither real nor is it unreal. It neither can be known nor is it unknown. But one thing we know, it is relative reality only, and requires it to relate to some kind of instrumentation and definitely some seer. So, entirely possible. Anything is possible in the relative world. But Vedanta is not that much concerned with it, unless it leads us to a conclusion that everything is actually pure spirit. It is not vibration. The vibration goes away once spirit is discovered. And when the relative comes back, then we deal with the relative now as manifested being. as the pure absolute, seemingly conditioned by the capacity for us to register it, bringing it within our range of understanding. And once we understand the absolute and become habituated to it, then we register both sides. We register both the dream world, as it were, of the Supreme, which we call Maya, and we also register the absolute. These are two sides of the same coin. Sri Ramakrishna puts it as the one side is called Nitya, the eternal, and the other side is called the relative, or more dramatically, it's called the game, the play. You can imagine it as a play of waves, no doubt. But you see, waves of water can formulate themselves into any shape. You put them into a cup, they'll take the shape of a cup. We have to look at things a little differently. Supposing you have a glass. So just a glass. From the glass's point of view, is there an inside or an outside? From the glass's point of view, there's neither. It's only from our point of view there could be an inside and outside. When you shift your perspective, you get a different answer. You mull around the ideas. So students were taught to understand this. Students go to a teacher. The teacher doesn't teach them. The teacher says, please stay with me for a while and mull around 100,000 different ideas. Look at it from this way, look at it from that side, see what happens. At some point or other, some inspiration will come to you. And when it comes, that's what we can explore. So bide your time, shuffle around a number of ideas, and then see what the cosmic mind produces. See what comes from that area which we call a superconscious mind. And according to that system, there would be a conscious mind, you can put it in the middle, unconscious mind, a vast area, a habit level, and a superconscious level, that is, insights where we unfold different levels and layers of these vibrations. But these vibrations in total are called mind. Different levels of consciousness, unfolded bit by bit. There may be beings who have that level or that layer unfolded, but not quite there. Then in terms of the Vedic language, they reside in the realm of Brahma, that is cosmic mind, and then automatically slide forward from there, or they get born as great mystics, yogis, or saints. That's the system. So there's no doubt there are other beings, according to the Vedic system anyway. And even when we are reborn, we can be reborn as higher beings on a different vibrational level. But to get moksha, freedom, we have to be reborn, because all we're doing is spending our holiday money. We are just experiencing the effects of all our actions. And once we've exhausted that, the effects of our actions, called karma, then we come back with the suitable equipment to discover higher and higher, deeper and deeper aspects of the one unity of existence. Of course, all along, there's only one mind, from which all the other vibrations come. Just as there's only one matter, there's only one energy. But still, higher still, deeper still, more profound, will be the unmanifest, as it's called, of Vyakta, and beyond that, transcending that formless God, if you will, in theological terms, there will be, again in theological terms, the Godhead. These are Meister Eckhart's terms, God and Godhead. So all along, we are a system of pluses. You agree with materialism? Well, we agree that there is such a thing as matter. It comes and goes. It's worth investigating. Find out the fundamental layer of it. We accept it. But there's more. Well, what about the realm of ideals and ideas? Yes, no doubt there are ideas. So we can agree with idealism. But there's more. What can be more? Well, there's a personal God, a cosmic mind. Yes, we acknowledge it. But there's more. What is more? We can call it God himself. But there's more. In a Christian theological language, we can call it the Son, and we can call it the Father. Or if you prefer, Mother, Mother Nature. But there's more. Now, when you say there's more, you haven't reached the final totality when you sum up nature. Only when you transcend that into the absolute, and cross the boundary, as it were, of the relative, and saturate yourself into the nectar which is there, whose characteristic we know is bliss. Characteristic we know is pure existence itself, without any qualities. Pure existence, pure consciousness, and pure bliss is how it's described. So we have to sometimes be careful not to be diverted with questions of the relative world. The relative world has its use when it becomes an indicator of the absolute, a kind of signpost. And we can take the relative world and all its multiplicity and ask, how is it pointing? Where is it pointing? And what is behind it? Not only is what is behind it, but what is manifesting through it. So we start in a process seeing that entity in a dualistic way inside everything, and then ultimately through everything, pervading everything, and then ultimately as everything. And so if you take all the glories which are there, say in the Bhagavad Gita, from chapter 7, 9, 10, and so on and so forth, we've summarized in English all these glories. And on the retreat we had, we recited these glories at noon. And the language is not in, the language is as. I am as, see, I am the Himalayan mountains. I am, of all the fish, I am the shark. Not I'm inside the shark. So that position is a higher position still. And we're not shy to say it. So just as the man who knocks on the door of heaven, and they ask him, who are you? He says, it is I. No, you cannot gain entry. Only it is thou. Thou alone are there. You can gain entry at that point. You get the idea?
Yes, Swami. So are you? Should it be understood? Therefore, that the universe is conscious of itself.
The universe in its pristine place, in its primordial unmanifest state, is indeed conscious of itself, yes.
Yeah.
Because it is not conditioned by ignorance. It is the master of Maya, it is Maya itself. When we talk about Prakriti or nature, and we talk about Maya, we're really talking of just alternative terms, that's all. It's actually the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And why would we use two different words for the same thing? Because we have to have multiple concepts to grasp the understanding. And one person will understand it from one point of view, another person from another. There's no standard teaching in this way if the subject is subtle. So that when we look at what we can describe as the infinite invisible, it's exactly that. Nobody can give me an example of something that is infinite. We can only give samples of it or symbols of it. The infinite sky. We can look in the blue sky, we can say infinite. Or we can look at the cosmos. It seems to go on forever. We don't know where is the boundary. We only know where's the boundary of the observable universe because it is all conditioned by the universal cosmic speed limit, speed of light. So we know that much. But when we talk of that infinite invisible, we have no concept of it, except the experience of pure being. And when we know that, of course, we are the knower. So knower, knowledge, and the object of knowledge will all become one. The knower, the process of knowledge, and the object will all become the same thing, one without a second. Of course, that's a good question. So we have to learn to shift away from the relative in such a way that it is useful for us to indicate something beyond. That is why Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras will talk about this Ishvara, the Lord, as the most ancient teacher. In other words, that level of knowledge beyond which you cannot go. When you say you know something, it means there's more to be explored. It's not the finality of knowledge. That's the point. Joe Goldsmith, of course, writes it beautifully. And of course, the language he writes in, he has a chapter like this. It's well worth reading. So it's a chapter called God as Law in Operation. Probably the idea, he says, that we like best of all to entertain is the idea of God as love. About 400 years before the birth of Jesus, he says, Socrates recognized that God's love is known by his law. That means everything that we observe has some kind of regularity in it. You must have noticed. That evokes a feeling of wonder. And that sense of wonder leads us like a signpost. Come, there's something more beautiful, something underlying it that manifests as pure beauty. So the whole universe has all multiple signatures. We should pick up the clue and not just deal with the superficial level. So if we talk about vibration, if we talk about sound, if we talk about language, we have to talk about ears that catch it. And how it makes a nice matching movement. What's the point if you have sound and no ears to catch it? But they're not standard ears. An owl has different ones. Human has different ones. And some other being will have different apertures as well. A dog will see things in black and white, so we're told. We see things in color. And sometimes we like to strip away the color. A very interesting discovery, and that is that all the classical Greek and Roman statues, are all colorless, just done in marble and imitated as well. In the classical Western world, imitated, but investigation shows that originally they were entirely colorful. They were brightly colored. Now, the interesting thing is, when this revelation comes and we find samples of it, how brightly colored these figures are, we don't like it. We prefer the classical colorless. There may be a campaign to take away all the color. We see classical buildings, seemingly emulating great Greek structures. Not a color amongst them, all dull, either white or now turning a little off-white and some going gray. Not understanding that in their original form, they were brightly colored. Let us take, for example, even the Norman castles. We think of them as bland gray structures. But we are told that they were all brightly whitewashed on the outside. Bright and impressive. And inside, tremendous colorful things. If you go to Dover Castle, for example, they will reconstruct the medieval chambers, all brightly colored tapestries, and the beds brightly colored. You'd think they were modern, ultra modern even. So sometimes when we interpret things, we strip away the authentic meaning of these things. It is a good example of how we like to live with things we're used to. And when we are shown the authentic things, we have to change our mind somehow. and make a shift. But isn't it exciting to make a shift? Imagine going in a car and only traveling in first gear, not traveling any more than that. I myself made an important discovery. I was driving to Bantry and back, probably this time last year, and my host, who's a great devotee, I don't know if she's here. No, she's not. So anyway, I'll keep it anonymous. Said, "Oh, by the way, did you know there was a sixth gear?" I said, "No." I've been traveling everything in, or a fifth gear maybe. I've been traveling all the time in 4 gears. Oh no, there's a fifth gear. I was wondering why I was using so much fuel. And then, did you know that there was a coasting mechanism? You press a button, you go at a certain speed, and it maintains the speed. Oh, I didn't know that either. Okay. You can take all your foot off the pedals and the car will almost drive itself. You have to be careful to apply the brakes whenever necessary. But what a wonderful discovery. Should life not be a series of discoveries like this? Should it not be that every day we make a new discovery? That every day we are something like a scientist with an open mind, scientific mind, being prepared for extra creativity and seeing the extra thing everywhere and giving it an extra value, discovering an extra joy in it, an extra beauty, an internal insight into everything. So that something is not just a something. We can see it as something marvelous. I remember I was staying with a devotee and they said, we were talking generally, they said, "Oh, you see, it's all right, but for you, but us ordinary people," I stopped them. I said, "No, you're extraordinary. Every one of you is extraordinary. We're all extraordinary. We have fingerprints never been seen before we were born. They'll never be seen again when we die. Or you can put it genetically. We have DNA that is totally unique. What does it say to us? It tells us that we have an investor, and a useful investor that wants us to carry out a certain task as part of dharma. That means part of the harmony of social living, among other things. So when we study nature, we see everything is exactly in its place unless we upset it. And then nature has a self-adjusting mechanism, an override, generally speaking, mostly. Even the idea that we should adjust the environment in order to bring it back to its pristine condition is surely to be taken as not just common sense, but some kind of divine inspiration that says, we have spoiled something that is beautiful. Let us try to restore it to its pristine beauty. And so people invest in cleaning up air, cleaning up waters, cleaning up the environment overall, probably not winning overall globally about it, but still the intention is there, sometimes derived from panic, sometimes derived from publicity, sometimes derived from conscience, and sometimes derived to bring back pristine beauty for the sake of bringing back pristine beauty. When I was at the Bellu Mutt in 2016, I was very disappointed to see polystyrene and plastic floating down the river. When I went in 2020, I saw it had been nicely cleaned. What a wonderful thing. And there were efforts to clean up the Ganga when I went to Varanasi as well. So, yes, we have the capacity to adjust things, not for any other reason. We have the capacity to adjust things because of higher thinking, nobler thought, access to the noble, access to virtue. And so I think we should take advantage of that. Then, if we cultivate virtue more and more, it becomes a purifier and clarifier for us. And that is where our revelation comes from. That is where our knowledge comes from. The internal discovery. But we have to learn to shift our point of view multiple times. And those people that don't shift, that are adamant, that say, I won't budge an inch, they will struggle because they're using a well-worn formula, and well-worn formulas have to adapt and change and shift. Even religions have to shift and change to catch up with contemporary life and contemporary living. Every religion that has survived till today has had to do it, to adapt and change. We ourselves have to do it also. Take a new approach. When I grew up, there was no such thing in our household anyway as a telephone. And then came in a party line. It's not a line where you invite people to come and with balloons and all that. No, it's a party line. A lot of people on the line. You have to wait till somebody's finished their call, and then you go through a telephone exchange. You want to phone even. Let us say you're here in Dublin and you want to phone Galway even. You have to go through an exchange, telephone exchange. And then they take your number and so on and so forth, and they can put you through directly, or they'll say, we call you back when lines are free. There's a far cry from picking up a radio called a mobile phone with a cell phone. Cell phone means that there are a number of different cells, a number of different receivers, and we can tune in to one at a time, looking like a continuum. And when we can't get it, we lost the signal. It's difficult. So all this radio communication that we have is because we have learned to tap into the radio waves in the electromagnetic spectrum. And when we tune into that, and even now what we're using, of course, is something, a kind of technology from quantum mechanics. And how quantum mechanics works, we know. Why it works and precisely how, we don't know. So these are various mysteries. Isn't it worth finding? Scientists declare, oh, we are excited when we find something new. And we're excited when we're proved wrong. Of course, they're not. They like to hold on to their pet ideas, It takes a great deal of convincing to shift them out of set thinking. So we have to be adaptable. We have to be flexible. We have to engender purity, and whatever gets revealed from it, we have to adapt to a new circumstance. We have to create a higher thinking. Simpler living and higher thinking is what is required. Good. Of course, I could talk more on the subject, but maybe there's another question. Yes.
Can you talk a bit or explain a bit about this term Kriya Yoga? It's become very popular in the last century. How does it differ from the classical paths of Bhakti, Karma, Raja?
Okay, so I hope everybody heard that question, so I'll repeat it. So can I tell more about Kriya Yoga that has seemed to become popular, and how does it compare to Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Jnana Yoga, and so on? You see, anything you can call a yoga. Yoga simply means a union. And so all kinds of yogas can come out. But really, if we talk of spiritual life, there are only 4 yogas. And anything else may come under those categories. Now, Kriya comes from the same root as karma, kr, to do. And so Kriya Yoga from yoga philosophy will consist of tapasya, self-discipline. It will consist of study and offering the fruits of your actions to God. This is termed as Kriya Yoga, purification. This is specifically mentioned in Patanjali Yoga Sutras. Now the thing is that if there's a modern trend somewhere, and let's say there's a book on it or a talk on it, then we have to be skeptical unless they go to original texts. If they go to original texts, because there has to be a basis of our understanding, nothing new. There's nothing new anyway. Now, if you talk about Kriya in the sense of purifying things which come under Hatha Yoga, for example, but does Hatha Yoga come under these other 4 yogas? I said they can't, or every other system comes under these 4 yogas. Well, you can put it in this way, and I mentioned it last night. There has to be purification, and purification is physical and mental. And mental involves emotional, intellectual, every sort of avenue we can think of. Let's split it up into two things, external and internal. So the external has its own internal version. What do I mean by this? Well, if you study anatomy, physiology, you'll see that there are many men or many human bodies, many anatomical bodies, not just one. You want to learn anything about these bodies, you take up a physiological book or a book on anatomy. You study it as a doctor, for example. And for ease of learning, there's such a thing as muscular man, such a thing as circulatory man, skeletal man. These are not different men or different beings. It is just stripping away layers so that we can study these things better. Because all the other layers are interfering. Let's say we want to study circulatory man. Then there are a number of levels in the way. Suppose we want to study skeletal man, then we have to strip away everything to the bare bones, so to speak, excuse the pun. So this framework that we want to study intimately the joints, how they work, what the ligaments look like in connection with them, whether a joint is a ball and socket joint or a hinge joint. What is the density should be? What is the length should be, a proper length? What happens if one of it breaks? What happens if there's a hairline crack? What is comprised of? If you open a bone up, you can see all the mineral content within it. You can see the calcium and how it can be calcified also. You can trace it back to nutritional value that constructs the cells of the bones versus the cells of the muscle, or the cells of the liver, for example. And so in this same way, we have to learn to categorize things into internal and external. The body, we can say, is external. And what it sees and relates to is also external, but it has its own internal components. And when we take all of that, we can classify it as one thing. It is made from yesterday's food. It's made from all the pasta and vegetables that you had, possibly from yesterday, and some internal secret formula is transmuting that into energy. That metabolistic system that we have has a transforming capacity. And then what about, so in dealing with this, what Kriya or purification action should we take? Well, just for example, you can do jala, you can put water and clean out the sinus system. Do it carefully. You can do some alternate breathing. You can do what is called Uddiyana Bandha. You can pump the tummy muscles, very useful thing. You'll get a lot of energy if you do that. You can roll a specialized piece of cloth and clean out the stomach. You can also clean out the nostrils in certain ways. You can clean out the bowels. Every area of the body that has an aperture associated with it can be cleaned in one way or the other. And you can use either the ancient methods or the more modern methods to do it. So these are all called kriyas, but it only has a physical value. But the kriyas that Patanjali is talking about has an internal value. So what are they? Let us take tapasya. Tapasya, according to the Bhagavad Gita, there are three types. There's physical, then there is tapasya of speech, internal speech, and then tapasya of mind. And so the 17th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita will deal with these three sections, because very often somebody asks, so what is tapasya? What is austerity? Should we be running on live coals? Should we be lying on beds of nails? Should we be scourging ourselves or wearing hair shirts? And hair shirts will make you extremely irritable. So if you're irritable by nature, this would probably not be so good. And so all of these different systems are there to be useful, not to hinder us. And the kind of austerity that is liked by those extremists will be called tamasic. That tamasic kind of austerity where you torture the body. And Krishna says people will do this out of ignorance. So there are three types of everything. Three types of austerities are mentioned. It's worth going through them. And these are kriyas. According to Patanjali, all this tapasya is 1/3 of these kriyas, or one section of three types of kriyas. So, worship of the devas, we have to explain what that means. So, devas, dija, guru, prajna, and this comes back to the question that Lionel gave, because what he did was he asked about different entities, different beings, and there's a temptation to say deva means other beings. Well, we have to look at the etymology of it and think that deva comes from the same root as diva, Diwali. That is some illuminating factor. You look into the night sky, you'll see many things shining. These are devas, illuminating factors. You have eyes, you have ears, all the sense organs are there. These are devas, these are illuminating factors. And so, of course, we can put them into the Puranas, we can put them into the mythology and declare them to be individuals. And sometimes, of course, it means that as well. But in this case, it means divine glories. Everything that we view, all these ultimate subtle forces which are there, these tanmatras, these subtle waves that manifest as other things, all these are devas. If you like, we can call them angels. You believe in angels. Well, now, because we're a religion of plus, because we're a system that says we won't say anything is wrong, we say, of course. We call them tanmatras. They make your crooked paths straight. They go before you. These are aspects of divine glories or graces, divine grace flowing in different forms. And so, therefore, worship of the glory of God. This is the physical tapasya. Why should it be austerity or tapasya of the body? Because when we elevate the mind to a higher and greater appreciation of all the divine forces behind what we see, what we hear, what we touch, what we taste, when we learn to tune the mind in like this, it immediately has an effect on the human body. Every cell of the body gets transformed by it, because every cell of the body is seen to be a spark of the divine as well, an echo of divinity, a manifestation of that same one entity. And so that is austerity, worship. Worship, you can say worship is austerity, regular worship. Then worship of those beings that are supposed to be twice born, that is, those beings that are teachers, those beings that are wise, and so on. These kind of beings. And then there's cleanliness, physical cleanliness. This is where your physical kriya comes in. Cleaning the body externally and cleaning it internally also. I want to dwell on that a little bit. You say it takes 4 hours to digest food. So they say. And they say many things. They must be right. So whenever I'm in doubt, I say they. Whoever they are, some anonymous entity that is a great authority. They say this, they say that. Okay. But they say it takes 4 hours to digest food, typically. Now, if it takes 4 hours, the bulk of what you eat, what you put into the mouth for digestion, Only the essence of it is taken out. That is the nutritional value, and the bulk goes off. So you're doing a mass balance. Now, supposing it doesn't go anywhere, it remains in the human body. Suppose it's not cleaned out. Supposing you have a sewage system and it's not cleaned out, then you'll retain it. And you'll retain it as a kind of septic tank, and that will create fermentation. With no air, no sunshine, something will ferment. And the result of the fermentation is that will rise up in the body. And it'll manifest itself in the head and the neck. You can diagnose a disease by examining the head and the neck. It's called the science of facial expression. If this person has a double chin, no doubt they will have a pot belly too. Pretty guaranteed. If there's a line that comes directly from the top of the head, or the curve, or the dip, the hollow, and it goes straight down, you look at it from the side, then that is called a back encumbrance. If somebody has a shining forehead with receding hairline, well, this is called a frontal lobe encumbrance. Somebody has heavy eyelids, fat around there, you can see the encumbrance there. If somebody has a one side distorted, you can see there's a encumbrance on that side, threatening the body on that side. Why is it? Because proper elimination wasn't done. Another way of phrasing it is, the person never carried out proper kriyas. Why should we do it? Just to keep clean and live long? No. We do it because we've revalued the human body as the home of all these devas, the whole home of all these divine graces, the home of that Lord who sits within, the Katha Upanishad calls the inner entity. The Bhakti Upanishad calls it the inner controller. There's a Lord sitting there in a city of 11 gates. You should surely keep it clean. Re-register it, God's temple, God's housing. Clean it on the outside, decorate and clean it on the inside also. Do some house cleaning, some spring cleaning, not just in spring. No? Because spring can be quite confusing. Like the person who goes into the rural areas, he tells the farmer, spring in the air. Farmer says, no, why should I? So you see, not just spring, it should be all the time, continuously, thinking that it is God's housing. And what about the mind? We'll come to that shortly. We think of it, revalue it. Lord, it's your sitting room. It's your internal sanctum. It's the place where you are enthroned, where you sit, unflickering. Your consciousness is unflickering. And who is unborn. Revaluing everything like this and revaluing all the other houses like this constitutes worship. And so cleanliness, simplicity. Today, people accumulate all kinds of things, including me. Whenever I go away, somebody gives me something. And what to do? I have to learn to leave some room in my suitcase. It'll be a hat or a jersey or something or other. It'll come back. And a gracious gift being given. Okay, thank you. I'll take it. It'll end up probably in St. Vincent de Paul or something. Something for the poor. So simplicity. We are far too complicated, far too complex. Technology itself is complex. I was mentioning how these mobile phones were not available. When I came to Ireland, mobile phones was a new thing for me, almost a new thing. We never had them in Zimbabwe. But it wasn't extreme in the other way either. We didn't have carrier pigeons either. We had telephones, it's okay. We had fax machines, it's okay. So all of this technology has caught up with us very quickly in a short space of time. And so has this made it simpler for us or complex? In some ways, it's made it simpler. In other ways, it's made it more complex. So simple living, the secret that is conveyed in the Chinese system of feng shui, make it clean, make it simple. Echoing, let's say, the Japanese style or the Zen Buddhist style, you might say, of simplicity, which has a beauty of its own. So simplicity, continence, that means self-control has to be there, control of all the senses, the bodily senses, and non-injury. We shouldn't injure anybody in thought, in word or deed. This constitutes tapasya. We can compare it with the yam and niyam that we studied yesterday in the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So these are said to be austerity of the body. So it is said that cha shariram tapa uchyate, it is said. Then what about the mind? Or what about speech even? So, anudvegakaram vakyam, words that cause no offense and which are truthful, pleasant and beneficial, and also regular recitation of scriptures. These are said to be austerity of speech. Now you see we have something similar to Kriyas mentioned by Patanjali, that there has to be contentment and purification, tapasya, and then study as well. You have to fill the mind with noble virtues and values. Does it mean to say that we have to be literate? Does it mean to say that we have to be scholars? Does it mean that we have to take scripture and analyze it endlessly, theologically, or any other way? No, that's not what is meant. So words that cause no offense, sometimes we have to guard ourselves, because the words that come out are simply what we are thinking. It's like the example, you see, of the football player. I think I've given this example before. And he's given a yellow card by the referee, and the entire stadium know that he's not at fault. It's an injustice. Even the opposition players know it. So the player, presented with this yellow card, says to the referee, "What would happen if I said you were a complete idiot?" The referee would say, "Here's a red card. I'd give it to you. You'd have to go off the field. Now don't argue any further." All right. Well, what happens if I thought you were a complete idiot? Well, you can think what you like. It's up to you. In that case, referee, I think you're a complete idiot. So you cannot think something and withhold it in speech. So it's better to think the best. It's better to convert all your thoughts to much nobler ways, the spiritual direction. Then it comes out as speech. So imagine then that it's not just not causing an offense, but the words are truthful. The words are pleasant. And more than that, beneficial. They're uplifting somebody. Imagine if you are a beaming ray of sunshine that goes everywhere. And your whole atmosphere, your whole speech, your whole demeanor, your whole social interactivity leaves people better off, leaves people uplifted, leaves people happy, joyful. Imagine a personality like that. This is the tapasya of speech, and also regular recitation of the scriptures. Recitation is a means of remembering the scripture. In other words, remember the principles of the scripture and the practices contained in there. Thinking that scripture is a manual for moral and ethical behavior. These are said to be, therefore, what is it? These are said to be vanmayam tapa uchyate, chaiva van mayam tapa uchyate. This is to do with what? Speech. And then what about the mind? Cultivating serenity of mind in all circumstances. Taking things as they come, casually, neither high nor low, neither overreactive nor overpassive. Taking things factually, calmly, taking things philosophically. Making serenity of the mind. That involves a sense of thankfulness, continuously cultivated. That means we have to observe things correctly. Gentleness, non-violence again, gentleness. That involves a certain level of compassion. Silence, wonderful. The silence. Self-control and purity of heart. Self-control begins with the mind. Purity of heart. You see, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God, said Jesus. Imagine the mind like a kind of lake with many, many disturbances within it, many ripples caused by wind and other things, and stirring up mud from the bottom, the action of the waves themselves and stirring up the mud itself will mean you don't have much clarity. You cannot see the bottom. Supposing the bottom is the real self, your self in depth, your glorious self, the Lord of the universe, the God of religion. Supposing that is your fundamental nature, you cannot see it. Why? Things are in the way. These are the waves. Waves are in the way. Oscillations are in the way. So what to do? You have to create counter waves. These waves have the characteristic of non-egocentricity, no attachment to body or mind, no attachment to personality or self-image, conducting yourself with the noblest of qualities and the noblest of outcomes. These are said to be mental austerity. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. You will see that truth that underlies everything when the heart, which is Oriental speak for intellect, when that becomes purified. Somebody of enlightened intellect is called a Buddha. Buddha, somebody of enlightened buddhi, enlightened intellect. This threefold austerity practiced with the utmost faith by steadfast people. Faith and steadfast. Steadfast is necessary for faith. Without desire for the fruit. Just no motive in mind, simply the idea of cleaning. That's all. For the sake of cleaning. Sake of purification. These are declared to be pure, sattvika, holy, pure. The austerity which is practiced with the object of getting recognition. Look at me. Praise and adoration, and for mere show, is said to be rajasika. It's unstable and transitory. You know the type. Oh yes, I've practiced yoga for many years. Yeah, you can't tell me anything new. Okay, how is your domestic life? Oh, not so happy. Oh, okay. So something is wrong somewhere. You know the kind of thing, see. I am humble and proud of it, see. The gift that is given at the wrong place or time to unworthy persons without respect or with contempt is declared to be tamasik, careless, crude, without any thought, except it's the extreme of selfishness. So, this is called tapasya, and that is one of the aspects of Kriya mentioned by Patanjali's Puraji Yoga Sutras. We can't call it you can see from the description, it's not exactly mortification. It's not exactly whipping the body or wearing a hair shirt. It's all to do with self-control. What is the effect? The effect is strengthening your will. A strong will is necessary. So all of these things, even if you fast, you're strengthening your will. Every form of control will be a strengthening of your will. And with a strong will, you can go ahead in spiritual life. And then study was mentioned as part of the tapasya. That means generally repetition of a mantra, filling the mind with holy company. And then ultimately offering all the fruits of your activities to God. So mentioned by Patanjali would be Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga. All the yogis are mentioned. So what is Kriya's position in relation to these yogas? That is it. When you embark on karma yoga, you are purifying the mind because you're removing all the anxiety, all the disturbing waves of anxiety to do with future orientation, and you're living in this present moment with doing all activities in a mindful way without any thought for what will be the effects of the fruits. Detaching from that. This is called tyagi. Then, what about Bhakti Yoga? Yes, Bhakti Yoga is worship without any motive whatsoever, offering everything. This form of tapasya is a more natural form because you don't have to give up everything. You don't have to renounce anything. You simply have to take the energy and divert it in a loving way. Attaching yourself to God means detaching yourself from other things. When God becomes big, the world becomes small. When the world becomes big, God becomes small. Jnana Yoga, great tapasya is necessary based on discernment all the time. Thinking and behaving in such a way that it causes detachment. I won't attach to something that I deem as unreal. And meditation, this path called Raja Yoga, well, Patanjali Yoga Sutras is dedicated to this subject. You can see how it works. So sometimes when people say Kriya and Kriya Yoga, they might not understand all these things. Well, it's past our 8 o'clock. So thank you for your company. And I hope this was useful.
Thank you, Swami.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, Swamiji.
Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Guru Mahagat Swami.
Guru Mahagat, yes.
Om